I know when my dad did it way back when I was a kid, it was a kind of an expensive proposition to get the antenna and the rotor and all that kind of stuff because you had to do the electricity. I was looking at some of the, these smaller antennas that you guys have down here that can that go on the roof and stuff. You were saying that people can get these at retail?
Yeah, we actually, this our Clearstream line is sold in retail, and it's available at Best Buy, at Sam's Wholesale, Costco, and Fry's Electronics, and a few other regional retailers like PC Richards on the East Coast. And the reason the retailers have embraced it is it doesn't take up the same shelf space as, again, an antenna that your grandfather might have used. We can fit a very powerful antenna in a quite a small form factor, and since the reliability is so much higher than they were in the past, the return rates are a lot lower. So the other advantage of the Clearstreams is the aiming characteristics are a lot more flexible, meaning they have a fairly wide beam width. They're not really a true Omni 360, but they have a fairly wide main lobe, so even if the customer is misaligning the antenna, unlike a satellite dish, you're probably still going to be successful in locking a signal.
You had there was some suggestion, you suggested that maybe I go try this now that you come out with some new technology over the long throw that I have, so I'm gonna go up on the roof and try that.
Yeah.
But there was another, I was talking about, and I think other Home Theater Forum members might have the same issue, is where not all the broadcasting stations are coming out of the same location. I mean, like when I used to live in Chicago, Rockford, you would point this way, this way, this way, this way, and for me, I have to get Fox, I have to point down to Tacoma, and the rest of them. So with that antenna, I can't ever get Fox because I'm not, unless there's snow on the roof, I can't pick up Fox. So, the thought was as well, use that for the beam down to Tacoma and use this for the ones that are in Seattle, but that was two, and I had one of my engineer friends told me, oh, you can't combine the two into one, but you were saying there might be some ways to do that?
Oh, you can stack antennas. Your engineer friend is partially correct in that it can be problematic because what happens when you combine antennas is it's possible for the signals to arrive at the combiner out of phase. And what happens is it's a term called phase cancellation, and if they arrive at different intervals, they can sort of cancel each other out, and you end up with much lower signal on both channels, in both directions. And so there's a little bit more art than science. We do suggest when you stack or combine antennas, it's helpful if you could combine like styles. But if you can't do that, at least try to make sure that the cable runs to the combiner are the same distance. That will help reduce the possibility when the signals arrive they might be out of phase. But again, if you're stacking two antennas, it would be better if you could combine this, similar models. And then there are some formulas on spacing, and sometimes if you have them spaced too close together, again, there is electrical coupling that could possibly go on that could detune each antenna, and so normally it's the more enthusiastic over-the-air viewers are experimenting with that, but we have a number of customers that will buy two of those like you describe and point them in opposite directions and make sure that the combiner is evenly spaced, and some folks will even go as far as to even get notch filters to make sure that what's being received in one direction doesn't overlap with what's being received in the opposite direction.
So you probably have more information on this on your website or something?
On AntennaSdirect.com we have stacking information. But we always suggest start out with a single, while we love to sell people multiple antennas, please just start out with a single antenna. And some of these models do have a weaker lobe off the rear. Even though they do have a main direction, they do have some residual capability off the back plane. And so what we often suggest is take the antenna and aim it at the weakest station, the one that gives you the most problems, and then ideally that you'll have enough residual resonance off the back end that you could pick up the stronger stations if they're in opposite directions. So try that initially, and if that doesn't work, then we'll try and walk you through an array.
When you said a combiner, what I probably incorrectly make up is that I would use a splitter in reverse.
That's what a lot of people do. There are combiners that actually have notch filters on them, and to prevent overlap between the two antennas. But you could just take a splitter. If you're feeling lucky, you can just reverse a splitter and try that. And if you notice that the primary antenna had a dramatic reduction in performance, then you know if you've got phase cancellation. But if not, you might be good to go.
So do you guys sell combiners too?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we have them on our website. There's low loss diplexers and combiners and splitters, just like you mentioned.
So that was the next question I had, is you asked me how long my cable length was, and then if I was splitting it out to multiple sources. So since I'm on the roof, I do have kind of a long cable run, and I do split it out, but I was using a powered splitter that I have in my rack, OnQ one. So is that like a bad thing to do, or what would be your advice on, if it's on the roof and it's a 2-story house and you're going down to the bottom, and you got to go to some, from there to other places, what's some of the best rules of thumb on that?
Well, rule of thumb, just figure you're going to lose about 30% of your signal, more or less, for every 100 foot of cable. You're going to lose 50% of your signal for every splitter port you add. Every time you split the signal, it's about a reduction of half. And then if you put it in the attic, you can whack about 40 to 50% off of the front as well. Now, powered splitters or a distribution amplifier can help you overcome the resistance of the long cable run or the resistance from the loss from the split. But what's really important, and this is what I really implore people when they're shopping for amplifiers, do not get the one with the highest gain. That's not the most important characteristic. We want you to buy an amplifier that has the lowest noise characteristic, because poorly engineered amplifiers can actually create a bigger problem than they solve by introducing noise on the line. Or they may have low resistance to overload, because you may have one station that's 30 miles in that way, but you may have one that's a mile over here, and it can actually overdrive the amp or saturate it, and the amp can oscillate. So well-engineered amps should not oscillate. They shouldn't be susceptible to overload. Even if you have a 1 megawatt station down the block, it should still be able to handle that. And it shouldn't introduce, ideally, we use a number of about 2 to 3 dB of noise. If you start getting up in a 4 or 5 dB of noise, then it starts it's above the noise floor of the tuner. The tuner can't pick out the signal from the background noise that the amp is introducing. So while gain is, it gives us a number that we can quantify, you can actually be more successful with a lower gain amp or a modest gain amp that has really clean characteristics.
Great.
So,
well, thanks, Richard.
Hopefully that helped.
No, it was great information. This exact kind of stuff. You told me when we were talking to you yesterday that you used to be on Home Theater Forum all the time. So we welcome you to come back.
This started as a hobby. I didn't start out to set a business. I was actually posting on the forum questions I was struggling with over-the-air reception. Now, this was back in 2000, around 2000, I was having reception issues, and I was buying rabbit ears, just like everyone else, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get reception. But remember, back then, the tuners were very primitive, they weren't very sensitive, and you had to have a much cleaner and a much higher level signal. And so I just started building antennas for myself, and then some other folks on the forum asked me to, if I could help out, and it sort of spiraled out of control. And then about 3 years later, it occurred to me, like, this could actually be a business. So it's funny how things sort of find you.
Well, great. Well, we're gonna post this so members can. This is great information, because it's, like you said, a kind of voodoo black art. And, I spent a lot of time researching, and I'm learning more even as I'm here. So I got to go back on the roof, because I kind of gave up, and you've inspired me to go and not give up.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
And we'll welcome you to come onto the forum, and if you have the opportunity,
I'd love to
answer some people's questions.
Absolutely.
So great. It's nice meeting you again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.